for the building up of our household to raise intelligent, productive, and usable children to raise up a righteous generation. We ask of this all in the name of Yahushua, who is Hamashiach. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. All right, sisters. Thank you for that. R678, we really appreciate you opening us up with prayer. Gosh, I have a sister who needs the call-in info. And so I am a little bit going to try to multitask this and see if I can send her this while we are talking. I want to get us opened up and get started though. So today, this is our homeschooling call, sisters. First of all, let me just say that welcome to every sister who's on the call, and let me just tell you how honored and thankful we are that you joined us on the call. We really appreciate it. We understand your time is very valuable, and so we want the call to be a very substantive and meaningful call, an edifying call. And so we're depending on every sister, particularly the wives and elders, if you would definitely continue to be very generous with your thoughts, chime in and let us know what direction we need to go with this call. Hallelujah. As we said, our topic is homeschool, and it is the perspective of an experienced homeschooling mother. And so that is our major topic today. But sisters, if you have another question that is burning in your heart that is somewhat off topic, hopefully we will have time to also answer other questions. You shouldn't feel, overly restricted in that. Just a little bit about RTA for those of you who are not familiar with us. RTA is a fellowship of patriarchal men and their households. And so all of the sisters and the wives of the elders that are on the call are part of the households of RTA brethren. And then we also have some guests on the call, and we're thankful for the guests that joined us as well. These calls are not about teaching scriptural doctrine. RTA is not an overly religious or doctrinally oriented organization. We're very practical, and we are about doing what works and finding out what works. And so we want to keep the call positive, and we want to make sure that you always know that RTA is a patriarchal organization, and so you should check in with your head on anything that is being said to make sure that it is applicable for you and for the children of your husband's household or your father's household, if you are in your father's house. Okay, sisters. I kind of want to introduce us and bring us in before we get really into the topic. First question is, because I don't want to spend the bulk of the call doing a criticism of public school or a criticism of traditional education, because we want to make sure the call is positive and edifying. So, but we would like to go around, particularly for anybody who is actually homeschooling now. Those are the sisters and the wives of the elders that we would like to speak up. And if you would kind of give us your perspective on why homeschool. So I would like, if sisters, if you would kind of chime in on that. Why do you think it's important to homeschool, or why did you decide to homeschool?
You able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go right ahead, sis.
Okay, great. We've been homeschooling for going on 7 years now. And the reason we decided to homeschool was because we did not like certain traits my eldest daughter was coming home with from the traditional school. She went to preschool or daycare, kindergarten, and first grade, and we pulled her out of first grade. And like I said, she's my oldest, so she's the only one who's actually been in the actual school system. And we found some disparities in the way her year-end state tests were administered and scored, which we did not like. We always got real good reports from her classroom teacher and her resource teacher concerning her studies and her behavior and her participation. And when she would bring home her year-end tests for the 2 years that she was there, she seemed to have achieved very high scores. However, when we meaning my husband and I, sat down to look through the actual test, we took each subject, each section apart, and we looked through them, and we wondered why certain things were scored in a particular manner. And we were not satisfied with the way the scoring was presented, given the actual work that she had done correctly. And so I requested a conference with all of her teachers, who surprisingly had absolutely nothing bad to say, but could not explain the rubric or why the testing was scored in the fashion that it was. And so we came to the conclusion after many conversations with other parents and other school staff and some research on our own concerning the school system and how our area was administering exams, that there might have been a particular curve that was being applied in our area that was not as favorable to our children, our meaning our community and our race. And we were not comfortable with that. So those two things coupled together. In addition, with the most important is that we would not be able to successfully raise our children, having them in the school system where they would be influenced by things that we did not approve of, where they would be influenced by things that we had no control over, and where we could not effectively administer our personal, ethical, moral, and religious beliefs in their lives in comparison and in contrast with what the system was presenting to them. And so that's the reason why we decided to homeschool, and after her, none of our children have been in the school system.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that.
Sister.
Okay, sister, you need you to mute your phone unless you're speaking. Is there a sister who'd like to answer? Why homeschool? Okay,
I'm sorry, Emma, what was the question?
The question right now is why homeschool? So why homeschool? So if you are a homeschooling mom, why did you decide to homeschool? I'm going to give it a shot while you think about if somebody else may want to chime in as well. I'm going to give you a few reasons why we homeschool. In my husband's household, we homeschool in order to for control. Okay, it's not a sin, it's not a problem to speak about power and control. So who do you want to have control and influence and power in the shaping and the development and the stewardship of this human resource? That's what your child is in a tribal mindset. Your child is a human resource. They are a resource. They are an investment. And so if you are spending all of this time trying to build, trying to do something for the future, do you really want to trust your investment to people who may frankly be your enemy, who may be operating directly against your tribal interests? Self-preservation, okay? Why homeschool? Self-preservation. Is the public educational system going to be giving your child what they need to survive and thrive? And in many cases, no. In many cases, they're actually trying to destroy your child, actively trying to destroy your child by funneling them into a prison system, the whole way they see your child, the lack of value, the lack of expectations. Are the skills that they are learning in public school actually skills that are going to help them to survive and to thrive, particularly with the challenges that we know are coming? So, self-preservation, survival. Another reason is to strengthen tribal relations. To strengthen tribal relations. Do you want your child to be closer to strangers in their peer group at school than they are to their tribal relations, their siblings and their cousins and their aunts and uncles and grandparents, etc., within the tribe? You really have to think about that. If you are surrendering them for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then particularly if they're consuming a large amount of media, your child is developing a bond and an attachment with other tribes. Remember, we have to think tribally, or we should be thinking tribally, particularly those who are of the Hebrew culture. You should be thinking according to your indigenous lineage and your tribe. And so, do you want your child to be developing bonds that are closer with members of other tribal groups, other family groups? Another one is rigor. Rigor, meaning essentially high expectations, high achievement. A lot of, depending on where you live, but I say in most places, the expectations of the schools are very low for our children. There's something that they have deemed the Matthew effect after the verse in Matthew, essentially describing that that more will be given to him that hath, and from him that lacks, even more will be taken away. And so, what is that describing? That's describing the concept of momentum or the concept of inertia. And what that really means is that for our children, especially our boys in the public school system, if they come into that system, they do fine early on. But then as they start to develop, and particularly as they start to look less like a baby and more just like a child, and especially when they start to become pre-puberty and start to go through puberty, we know that the innocence wears off much more quickly for our children, particularly our boys. They are not seen as innocent. They are not seen as worthwhile. And so, and then also, the expectations for them become lower, and the whole system is geared as essentially taking from them and relegating them to a subservient slave master type of position, type role, type dynamic. And so what we're seeing is that they're doing fine until it starts becoming clear that they are out-group males. They are not the in-group males for the people who control this society. And so once they start being recognized as other, as they become older, more mature, then they start to be more and more at risk within the public school system. And so right along with that, their natural giftedness starts to not be enough to overcome the systemic advantages that are being bestowed upon some students and being taken from other students. And so there are all kinds of ways that that our boys end up falling behind at that age. So if you don't want that to happen to your boys, particularly, but also the girls, but particularly to the boys, and again, that speaks to your tribe, your tribe's investment. If you don't want to start losing your investment, particularly around that 3rd or 4th grade age is when it really starts to happen, then you really need to think about being more intentional and taking some control of that with homeschooling. Anybody else? Sisters, anybody else have any thoughts about why homeschool?
Hello, can everyone hear me? Oh,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, sister.
Hello, this is Sister Anna Barca.
Okay, okay. Did you, sister? Can you speak up just a little louder? Go ahead.
Okay, can you guys hear me a little better now?
Yes,
Hang on. All right, that's better.
that's even better.
Well, I absolutely agree with Sister Gina on all of the things that she said, and those are more of the reasons why me and my husband also decided to homeschool our children and also his children from another relationship. My main reason for homeschooling my girls is because I wanted to preserve their innocence in a way, to protect them from all the bullying and the physical body appearance that people normally are so fixated on at that age, at that development age. They're always thinking about, I don't want them to have any body issues. And I know girls can be kind of mean and cruel. I'm sure we've all experienced that in our young days. So that was one of the issues that I didn't want for them to go through. One of the things I didn't want them to go through was that specifically. And then also just being the main one who is influencing them and influencing their thought process and making sure that they're going to turn into, decent human beings. That was mainly mine right there.
Thank you for that.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Sister Casey. I decided to take my son out for pretty much all the same reasons that you all did, but also because I have a business in a unique home setting in which he would be more valuable in learning the type of lifestyle as well as skills to maintain his future inheritance. And he would be better off learning the skills, the financial wherewithal, the animal husbandry and things like that will perpetuate him and hopefully his future children and future grandchildren forward right now, because they absorb so much at this age. A good deal of the skills and the know-how will be secondhand to him by the time most people are learning of it the first time or gaining an interest in some of the things that we're doing. In my eyes, of course, maintaining his innocence, avoiding the impact of other cultures and things like that on him, his behavior, but being able to build up that, how would I put it, that feeling of ownership, that feeling of connection with his lifestyle, his setting, his inheritance was very important to me, so that as he gets older, it's not taken for granted that, oh, mom, aunt, uncle, father worked for this, but this isn't really what is important. I want to instill that in him now, and really have him understand the value that it holds, so that hopefully he won't just sell it off, when I pass. Hopefully this is the lifestyle that he chooses, and if he chooses not to live our particular lifestyle, he will still understand the value of it, so that if he needs to sell or if he wants to sell, he won't be undercut. A lot of our people, they receive some type of inheritance in land or business or whatever, but they don't know enough about it, or they don't value it enough to really profit from it if they decide to sell, if they decide that this isn't for me. that was my main reasons,
Thank
along
you.
with all of yours, of course.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful, very timely. Sisters,
Mhm.
we're going to come back to that, so don't feel like you will have an opportunity if you'd like to weigh in on that a little later. Um, the next thought we want to just to set up the dialogue here is approach to homeschooling. So the why, we just talked about some of the why, um, but I wondered if we might share something about our approach to homeschooling. As for the Murray tribe, um, we really think that homeschooling is needs to be about who helping them figure out who they are, their tribal identity. In other words, understanding that we are a special chosen people, and to understand what their tribe's purpose is, which is the patriarchal, the purpose of their patriarch, of their father, and then understanding what their individual purpose is within that tribe. And so, what special skills, what special service is that son or daughter being asked to render in preparation for, as an adult, and even before being an adult, being a contributing member of the tribe? Also, what goes along with that is knowing at all times what I must do and what I must know. And so, what must I do? What must I know to be a contributing member of the tribe? What is my responsibility to the other members of the tribe, vertically and horizontally? So a son needs to understand, what is my responsibility to my father, to my grandfather, to my uncle? What is my responsibility as it pertains to my brothers, as it pertains to my seed? As a young man, even his preparing for his sons and his grandsons. What is going to be his responsibility? Understanding that each tribe should be trying to build tribal capacity. Tribal capacity, meaning what can Israel as a group look to your family or your tribe to do in terms of solving problems. Also we talk about building a common language, common values, a common group narrative or group psychology. Okay, we want you thinking like your tribe, not thinking like the oppressor or thinking like your enemy. So those are some of the that's how we approach homeschool, and so everything that they need to learn is based on their tribal identity. Now, I'm interested in diversity here, sisters. So we may be approaching this thing, and I'm certain we're looking at it from different perspectives, and that's what needs to be represented here. So I would love it if some of the other sisters who are homeschooling share with us you all's approach to homeschooling. How do you go about it? What is important to you as far as how you approach educating your children? Sisters, are you there? Do we have Kay and 910? Kay and 910, are you there? Because I do know that you have some very interesting and very important things to share. I wonder if you would share your approach that you really have brought to the table.
This is Kay at 910. I think that the best approach for our children and teaching our children would be the project or the problem-based learning model is extremely useful in a lot of the settings that the sisters were describing for the reasons why they chose to homeschool in the first place. But if we can just be of the mind that we can solve our own problems and instill that in our children, that from our youngest, to whether they want to look at the similarities and differences between, um, ducks and geese, and creating web graphs to all the way up to some of our older children with designing their own apps and looking at farming and animal husbandry and the best way to grow micro things, and just being able to instill in our children that they are capable of critical thinking and knowledge acquisition and a lot of skills that go along with problem-based learning are, extremely important. Being able to write and communicate.
But she don't know we on.
Sister K, hold on 1 second. There's a sister who needs to mute her phone because your background sounds are coming through.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Sister K, go right ahead.
Saying there's a lot of skills in having knowing what your children are interested in and what kind of questions they ask as they go about their day, and being able to give them the resources and to facilitate them in their own discovery. And preschoolers can plant seeds and start seedlings, and older children can engage in robotics teams, on that kind of national level all the way up. So the problem-based or the project-based learning, I think, is the best approach for our tribe, and I wholeheartedly support that endeavor, and just being a facilitator who's there to, guide and monitor the learning process and be a resource for our children as they, solve problems. That would be it, and I'm going to mute my phone now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We thank you very much for that. Any other sisters want to chime in? So that was the perspective. There was problem-based learning or project-based learning, and that's something that we really do co-sign. We really agree with that. And it's one of those things where PBL or project-based learning or problem-based learning is something that may start slow, but it's incredibly powerful over time. Wonderful. Any other sisters that want to chime in on how your approach, your overall approach to homeschooling?
Hello.
Yes, sister, speak your mind.
Sister Anna. We also use the problem-based learning, and I've actually gotten a chance to see how powerful it is, because I've noticed the improvement in the children and solving their problems on their own without having to come to us for help. And my husband has actually made a basic spreadsheet to help them with the process. And I've noticed that they've been using the sheet, and it's actually really helped a lot. So that is definitely a powerful tool to use. The other one is just watching them and seeing what they're interested in. When they were in public school, I wasn't able to really get that time with them to see all the things that they're interested in and how beautifully smart they are. Sorry, I lost my thought.
It's okay.
So yes, I do definitely agree with the problem-based learning. They're not at the level where they can do their work on their own yet. So right now they're just doing the basic math, science, and social studies. And we've been utilizing different websites like Khan Academy for math and biology, and then just setting up times for them to do those throughout the day. We've also added cooking class for the girls. So with them being home and being homeschooled, it allows for them to learn so much more than they would have been able to learn in the public school.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Yet another testimony for problem-based learning or project-based learning. That is really great. You mentioned just now, it was great that Sister A mentioned Khan Academy. And so, sisters, keep in mind we have, as last time I looked at it, it was about 17 or 18 different links, helpful links under the resources for the event, post the event for this call. So if you go to the Facebook page for RTA and then you look under events, today's call is there. It's called Women of RTA Call. And if you look at the discussion portion for this call, for this event, there is a post that says Women of RTA Call Resources. And that's where it would be great. Actually, there's 19 there right now. If you would post links that you found helpful so that other sisters can see that. And then if you also get a chance, look at We STEM Out, which is a Facebook page dedicated for STEM and problem solving for indigenous and descendants of slaves. Basically, we are trying to really, really push problem solving for our community because we know we have great challenges and great trouble ahead for our community, and we want particularly our men, but also our daughters, we want them to be prepared to really do crisis management, to do problem solving, to do troubleshooting. And so this is really important. Let's shift gears, sisters, and we can come back to any of these points. There'll be a time to chime in. Pearls for success. At this point, before we're almost to the point of bringing in our words of wisdom. So, Sister S, get ready because we're almost to the point where we really want. So, if you would save yours, our main sister who's going to speak today, if you would save yours, and we'll do pearls for success, and we'll ask for pearls and pitfalls for all of the sisters, especially if I could hear from the elders' wives who are on the call, who are doing some homeschooling. Those, if I could hear from you first. Let me see. While you get ready, is J910. Are you able to speak? Are you at a place where you can speak? Because if you could, we'd love to just have some pearls and some pitfalls regarding homeschooling, your experience. Yes.
Shalom, sisters. Homeschooling within my tribe has been just a wonderful blessing. I cannot express enough just how much the input of the mothers in my tribe and the influence that they've and the blessing that they've been to the children who were birthed through me. That's something that I really wanted to just kind of lift up, is just how much having a mother whose parenting and teaching style may be a little bit different from yours, but really balances out the development and understanding of your children. So being that was one of the benefits that I think has really blessed the children, is just the having the input and the different styles from mothers on their learning experiences. I know we've used Khan Academy, also generationally, from our Lord's mother. We were able to have the children involved in a group called 4-H, and that gave them opportunities to develop their speaking, the art of persuasive speech, and then also their learning was supplemented by writing and research projects that their father has assigned. And so all those experiences have kind of really rounded out their education, and the children are all very well balanced there.
Okay, sister, any pitfalls or words of warning or things you do differently that you, I mean, even if you just have a couple?
Okay, pitfalls. I guess the only one that I can really think of is maybe trying to do it all on your own without the benefit of guidance from experienced women, and just trying to do it all on your own, trying to reinvent the wheel. Of course, you do have to figure out what's going to fit within your husband's vision for his children, but there's a lot that you can glean from other wise women who have been down this path.
Well, very well. Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. That is a very important thing. I mean, in Hebrew culture, just like most indigenous cultures, you're not in it alone. It's expected that you have the resources and the institutional memory and the collective wisdom of the whole tribe. So if you don't have that, you are welcome to reach out to us, and we can try to tap you into the things that we've learned. At some time in the future, if you're looking for someone to give you some counsel, we don't know everything, but we certainly will be willing to try to help you. Any other sisters? Let's see. Who else? I'm looking particularly right now for wives of elders who may be on the call. Particularly if you did some homeschooling or are doing some homeschooling and wouldn't mind sharing some pearls and or some pitfalls. And feel free to Jump in.
Sorry, I unmuted my phone to say something, and then they screamed right when I did it.
Go right ahead, sister.
I guess some pros of homeschooling my kids is I know what they're doing and who they're with. I mean, they're still little right now. My oldest is only in second grade, going into third grade. The pros is I get to be involved in their learning and, seeing where they are, engaging where they are, and adjusting the curriculum to where they need it, I suppose. Then the cons of it is I'm alone, and I don't have the support system of a sisterhood or some people who are doing it around me. So that's a con, and so my kids don't really get out or get around other kids that are their age and stuff. My 8-year-old acts like my 2-year-old, and so that's a con for me. So there's that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a good point. Now, some have, especially when homeschooling really started catching on. I mean, when you're talking about the people who were homeschooling in the 60s and stuff, everybody would always, they'll be so shocked. Are they going to be socialized? Will they have social skills? So that is variable. Most homeschooled children are actually better socialized than than children who go to public school, because they actually regularly interact with a wide range of ages rather than being only with people their exact same age. So that can kind of go either way. But definitely okay, definitely that is definitely valuable. Just the things you said about being aware of where adjustments need to be made. In public school, I'm telling you, a year can go by and you may not understand how far your child is falling behind, because they can just pass them on, and especially if they're not a behavioral problem. It can be a situation where they basically the time is getting away from you without realizing it. I just got a contact from another sister who wants to join the call, so I got a little distracted there. I wanted to give her the call info. But while we're doing that, at this point, the moment we really have been waiting for, I say that because I have so much respect for this family and so much respect for the patriarch of this family and the whole family, and all that they do in Israel. And so at this point, I would hope that Sister S, are you ready to share some things with us on an experienced perspective from an experienced homeschooling mother? Let us know. Are you ready, Sister S? I'm looking for your area code. You're either Maryland or VA. Yes, sister.
Shalom. Yes, I am ready to speak. I was listening to. You're welcome. I was listening to all the questions that you were reading off at the onset of the call, and they're pretty general questions. Some were specifics, but they were pretty general questions. And I think the first thing all parents really need to consider when they first get the eureka of having to homeschool their child or children for the benefit of their posterity is, can I really do this? Am I in this for the long haul? what time commitment am I going to put into this? Am I going to do it during the early elementary years and then switch at middle school or switch at high school? Or what focus am I really going to take as a directive? And I think the very first step in that is, of course, after you've all prayed and meditated and come to a conclusion, either within your nucleus or as an immediate family, is learn your rights, learn your state laws. Every single state across the country is independent in and of itself from all other states, and they all have their own processes, procedures, regulations, deadlines, requirements, reporting, and things of that nature. So whereas one state may have to report attendance, 10 others don't. One state needs a certain number of hours per curriculum, all others don't. Some states have no reporting requirement. Some states only require that you notify the school system that you have the intent of homeschooling your child or children, and that's not asking for permission. That is informing the school board or whoever is the governing body of education in your state that you're going to do so. And in order to be sure of what you need to do, you need to know the laws as they come down from the state. And I say state because sometimes local areas, townships, and municipalities try to infringe their own processes upon the citizens that are not interfering with state laws. And so you have to be careful with that. And so once you are sure of what your state laws is, you need a support system. You have to find other parents around you, in your town, in your neighborhood, friends, family, other co-ops that can help you. Because sure, you can do this by yourself, but why burden yourself when you can have so much help around you? And sometimes you don't even know the help is there simply because you have not looked. And so co-ops or cooperative education is a very good resource for many, many people, especially single parents, because what happens is you join a group of like-minded people who are all homeschooling their children, and you come together for a day or 2 days or 3 days during the week at an agreed-upon location. And usually what happens is the parents who are members of the group teach the children in their area of expertise. For example, my husband and I were part of a homeschool co-op here where we are, and I taught a Spanish class. I co-taught a beginning sewing class. My husband taught anatomy and physiology. He taught special skills for special needs kids. I organized and facilitated a college fair for high school students. And so there was a trade-off in the services we provided and the services we received. I taught classes so that my children could receive classes for free in exchange, and my husband did the same. We did get paid for some classes. Some classes we bartered on. Some classes we gave as freebies for people who needed it and could not pay what the co-op was asking. And so support is very, very necessary, because when you wake up on a day where you just want to pull your hair out and you do not want to crack open a book or even put a video on the TV, you need someone to fall back on. The other thing is learning, and if I'm going too fast, you can stop me, but I know people are going to have questions, so I'm trying to generalize what I'm saying.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome. Another important factor is, which was very, very important for me because I have a large family, was being able to identify the different learning styles of the children that I have, that are my own, and others that were or may have been under my care. Some children are visual, and they need lots of pictures, different colors, lots of videos. Some children are tactile, and they have to be able to find a way to use their hands in what they're doing. So, you know, in teaching science, you have silly putty, you have Play-Doh, you have kitchen science where you have your kids do their math and science while trying to learn a recipe, but they have their hands on the food, which is really the best way for them to learn the material. You may have children who are auditory. So instead of someone sitting with them, talking to them, or showing them how to do something on paper, it's best for them to listen to something on tape or on CD. You may have kids who are verbal kids and are very sociable. And so those kids can't necessarily work on their own. They need to be part of a team to work. And so that's one of the pearls of homeschooling for me, because I can address every single individual learning need and learning way and learning style for all of the children. And you can do it even if you have multiple children. You can achieve the same thing with different learning styles. In the psychology world, I believe there are 7 or 8 known learning styles, and you can research online. I think I posted a link on the RTA discussion concerning it. And so it'll save you a lot of trouble when you think your child is just being aberrant or disobedient. No, not at all. The problem is that the information has not been presented to them in a fashion in which they can comprehend. So it's the same thing as having a quote-unquote special needs child where you have to do things in a particular manner or present things in a particular manner in order for them to comprehend. Well, the same applies to all children. A child who cannot conceptualize something in black and white needs nice, colorful, flowery art to see the same exact thing. Now, you can take those same 2 children, sit them side by side, give one child a black and white print, and give the other child a color print, and your goals are achieved all in the same setting because you address the needs of both children at the same time. Another thing that I did was I operated on a need-to-know basis. And basically, at the end of the day, everybody doesn't need to know my business, because the truth of the matter is the perception of homeschooling, even today after so many years, is very narrow-minded. Mind you, public school has not been compulsory or mandatory for a whole lot of years. The onset of mandatory education was only because women had to be forced into the workforce because husbands had died in war. And so prior to compulsory education, everyone taught their schools at home. That's why you had the one-room schoolhouse, where you had one neighborhood teacher who taught all of the kids from ages 4 all the way on up to ages 16. And so we're just doing the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun. But again, not everybody is supportive of this. And so a lot of times, some of my family members don't even know I homeschool. They have no idea. They have no idea that my 10-year-old is taking online college classes. They have no idea that my 12-year-old is taking online college classes. Why? Because I know they are not going to be supportive of that. And so I don't tell them, because why give myself the headache? Why do I have to explain myself to them? I really don't, because at the end of the day, I am responsible for my children. My husband is responsible for my children, and no one else is except he and I. And so surround yourself with people who are supportive and don't feel the need to explain everything that you do, because some people are just sour, and they will have nothing nice to say, no matter how well your child is, no matter how well behaved and how well presented and how greatly your child articulates himself and is respectful to others. They just won't be nice about it, and they really don't care to be nice or to really hear what you have to say. The next thing I'm going to say is finding resources can be overwhelming. Picking curriculum can be overwhelming. Participating in activities, trying to find things for your children to do can be overwhelming, because there's just a plethora of things out there, and you will want to get involved in everything, but you can't get involved in everything. You have to prioritize. You have to prioritize each child's needs. You have to prioritize the time you have. You have to manage your time. I overextended myself in the first 2 years with activities and meetings and events and going here and going there, and there was just too much to do, and everything I wanted was all at the same time, and I tried to figure it out, and you just can't. So you have to prioritize and try to have balance between what you want your child to achieve, what your child wants to achieve, and what they need to know for entering the real world and for being contributing, prosperous members of society. And then once you find something to fit that criteria, you have to set yourself a budget because you can't go broke on homeschool. There's lots of resources out there. If it's your very first year homeschooling, I strongly suggest you only spend money on paper, on crayons, on pencils, the essentials. Use all free curriculum until you find the things that actually work in your home for you and your children. Until you can pinpoint your child's learning style, don't spend too much money on curriculum. I can honestly say that for all my children, I spend $500 or less for a whole year for 6 children for all core subjects. I may spend a little extra on activities. For example, my local community college has great summer camps right now, and so I intend to put all of them in at least one class here or there, and that's going to cost me some money because I have to take them there to the campus to participate. But even so, there's still tons of free stuff that you can get that you don't have to pay for. The all-in-one curriculum sets don't always work for everybody. It's very difficult to find an all-in-one curriculum set that will work for every single subject because you might do good with what they give you for math, but the language arts might be boring, the science material insufficient or not challenging enough for your child, and then you'll find yourself adding a lot of things to supplement, which in turn ends in you wasting money and having to purchase other materials as well. And lastly, I'm going to say get out of the box. Homeschool is not public schooling or any kind of traditional school structure at home. Homeschool is mom and dad making it happen, making it what it needs to be for the child to achieve and to gain and retain, which is a problem a lot of people have with children in traditional schools. The children are not retaining the information and the children are not being challenged, okay? Let's say, for example, my kids love to eat. Okay, y'all love to eat, fine. Y'all need to go grow some food. I have a huge yard. Go grow some food. So we got potatoes planted, we got tomatoes planted, we got peppers planted, we got rosemary and thyme and oregano and basil and all of that stuff. And what happens is that when my kids want something, they literally can go outside and pluck a pepper off the plant, run inside, wash it, and eat it. Okay, but what did we do? We learned about soil. We learned about fertilizer. We watched the seeds flourish. We did both seeds and we bought plants that we put in the ground. They figured out how do they grow their food. Then we compared how much did I spend for the cost of the peppers at the store that I had to drive 30 minutes to get to in comparison to what I spent with the seeds or the plant that I put in the dirt in the ground. Which one was more cost effective? Which one was more gratifying to me? And at the same time, they learned the art of delayed gratification. Why? Because they had to wait for the thing to ripen before they ate it. And so that's what homeschool is about. It's about everything in life being applied to what you need. But at the same time, as parents, we have to guide them through. We have to put them on the path. And so what I do during the summertime or each year, I switch the themes. I ask each one of my kids to give me the top 3 things they want to learn about this year. And so whatever thing they choose, I try to focus their things on that.
Oh.
Try to focus their things on that. And so, for example, I have one kid who at one point wants to be a firefighter. Next month he wants to be a mechanic. Okay, no problem. So he's learning all things about cars. At the same time, he's responsible for taking care of the animals that I have sitting in my yard. Why? Because 6 months ago, he told me he wanted to be a farmer. So and that's also part of what is called unschooling. Unschooling is going with whatever the child wants to learn and you maneuvering the child's interests and ideas in order to present the information for them to learn it at their own level. And that you might be teaching the same exact thing to 3 different age groups at their own level. And so I would say, in closing, one of the pitfalls of homeschooling for me was finding time for me, because I did everything I needed to do in the household, did everything I needed to do with the kids, but every day, once the kids were put together, there was always, oh, I got to do one more thing before tomorrow. And so I had to stop that and say, no, okay, enough is enough. I need to take care of me. I need to spend time by myself, create time by myself, create time for my husband. These kids go to bed. I'm going to put all these books and all these planners and all these spreadsheets I got in the closet, and I'm going to stop. And I'm going to relax, and I'm just going to sit, take a long bath, take a hot shower, eat something good that I don't want to share with nobody, and just take care of me and focus on me so that I don't get burned out. I'm going to clean the kitchen out.
Okay, wonderful. There's a sister who may need to mute her phone. We're hearing some background coming in. Sister S, that was very, 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 very good, very, very thoughtful. Thank you for that. I kind of want to open it up for people to pose questions to you, but we're going to have to keep our phone muted unless we're speaking, and try to give each other a moment so that we're not talking on top of one another. Anybody and this is really, I'd like if some of the younger sisters, maybe if you haven't started homeschooling, or you're thinking about it, or you're about to start, or maybe you've only been homeschooling a few years, this is your opportunity to ask. You can address her as Sister S. Ask her, our speaker, a question related to homeschooling or related, is something she said struck, resonated with you. Anybody have a question?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mimi. I have an 8-month-old son. And Sister S, thank you for all your wisdom and your knowledge. I took a lot of notes. And I'm just wondering, how do you prepare your child for homeschool, and when do you actually start? Because you're not going to a public school system, we don't have to wait until they're 5 years old to start learning. So when do you start, and how do you prepare?
Well, with children, I have to say, first of all, with the one child that did attend public school, once she was out, I took some time, and I don't know exactly how long it was, but I know it was at least 60 days to do what we call de-schooling. That is to break the pattern, break the routine, break the scheduling, and break the image in her mind and her remembrance of what she had of the traditional school. And so, while I do have a daily schedule that I function within, it is certainly not set in stone, and I'm not a stickler for minutes and hours either. I don't. Sometimes in school they ring a bell and you have to switch from one thing to the other. We just go with the flow. On a certain given number a day, I have a bulletin board, and so this is what we're doing today, and we can get that accomplished in 2 hours, or we can get it accomplished in 5 hours. It depends on how the day goes. But with young children, and again, compulsory state-mandated education is school-age children from ages 4 and up, depending on what your state mandates. Some states is 4, some states is 5, some states is 6, some states is age 8. It depends on where you live. And so outside of that, when you have early childhood education, which is all ages prior to the kindergarten age, is really interest-led. It also depends on whether you have, in my opinion, my personal opinion, a boy or a girl. If you have a boy, in my opinion, boys need a lot of hands-on activities and a lot of redirection. girls do too, but I find it, in my opinion, easier to have girls be a little bit more mellow and a little bit more to follow along what you're doing. But at 8 months old, it's real easy to introduce just everyday things, because at 8 months old, you're trying to show the child motor skills, how to hold their spoon, how to hold their sippy cup, things like that. You start introducing consonant sounds for saying cup, cup, cup. If you're introducing pants, pants. So anything that you do throughout the day that the child can mimic, you do that. And then a lot of reading. One thing that I did particularly with my children was when I would sit down to breastfeed them, I would recite the 10 Commandments to them. And so I would just recite it, I would probably get through it once or twice through it. Once they got a little older, from like 11, 12 months and on, when I would sit all of the kids down for their bedtime prayer, they would just sit there and listen, but the repetition would have them pick it up. So I would say being consistent in the same thing over and over and over on specific things will help a great deal, especially at a young age. When you're teaching the ABCs, you do the ABC over and over and over and over, and eventually the child just picks it up and does it on its own. And so you have to identify the things that the child should be doing or that you think the child should be doing at that stage, and you focus on those things that you think are important. And not all children are the same. What an 8-month-old child will do for one person, another child won't do until he's 12 months. So you really cannot compare children across the board. You have to localize on the child in front of you.
Thank you so much.
Can I
You're welcome.
I would really like to just to echo some of that. With a tribal mindset, each member of the tribe is valuable with their uniqueness, with their giftedness, with what they bring biologically, with what they bring to the table. So there's not a need to compare, and definitely between tribes there should be no need to compare, because so that should allay some of our fears. So you don't want to be fearful. Because you don't want to be captured by this fear that, oh, I don't know if I'm doing enough. Oh, I don't know if they're keeping up with the students who are in school, in public school, or other homeschoolers. And you have to watch being in certain organizations, because some women have a real bad disease of trying to compete with each other's children. And that can be psychologically damaging for you and stressful for you as a homeschooling mother. If you feel like you're not, your children maybe aren't able to compete, or you're not able to compete, that's unnecessary pressure. So that's just another part of that. The value of time. If you're starting thinking in a tribal way, thinking in a patriarchal way about purpose and about being very intentional about your child's education starting at 8 months, or even those of you who will be starting in the womb. You'll even be reading to your baby while your baby is in the womb. That is a wonderful, wonderful blessing to have the benefit of that time. A lot of people got started much later, but these are going to be some wonderful, wonderful minds that you will be able to shape starting that young. Any other young sisters, do you have questions for Sister S? Please ask your questions.
Yes. Yes.
Go right ahead.
Hello, Sister S. My name is Laura Beth, and first of all, I'd like to start off by saying thank you so much for dropping all those gems, because you just shared so much useful information, and you really opened my mind to homeschooling and definitely making me feel like it's possible. My son is 2, and I've never, I haven't begun schooling at all. Honestly, he goes to daycare because I work full time. And, he's already super intelligent, and I would just love to be able to teach him at home because he's definitely already starting to pick stuff up at his daycare that we definitely don't want. But one thing I will say that I wanted to ask you was, and just thank you again for sharing all of that with me and with us, but I just wanted to ask, my son, oftentimes, like I like to do letters with him, like you were saying about the cat and pants. I really work with him on letters as well. But oftentimes, like we'll get through like 4, and he doesn't want to do it. He gets really shut down. He really does not like, I feel like when he feels like he isn't right immediately, he just gets really frustrated, and then he'll just completely not want to do it anymore.
Okay. What I would suggest at his stage is, instead of jumping into writing the actual letters, you practice shapes first. And don't start immediately with triangles and squares and circles and ovals and hearts and stuff like that. Start with slants and lines and dots, a forward slant, a backward slant, a horizontal line, a vertical line, upward mounds, downward mounds. And what you do is you do each one of those at a time. And after he has mastered every one, then you introduce the letter that looks like that. For example, do horizontal lines. Once he has mastered horizontal lines and vertical lines, you would do the letter I, the letter L, the letter T. After you do forward and backward slants, you would do the letter A, the letter M, and the letter N, and the letter Z. After you do mounds, you would do your lowercase m, your lowercase n, your lowercase and uppercase U. And after you do circles, you introduce the B, the D, the C, the P, and the Q. And then all the other letters, S, you would do squiggly lines first, or like drawing snakes, and then the letter S, because you may be pushing him past his point where he can go. If he's already demonstrated that after like 4 letters he stops, what you would do is do only 3 and then only do the 4th if he wishes to continue and shows you that he wants to move past that point. But at his age, you need to both follow his cue and redirect his attention at the same time. But you don't want to frustrate him, because you don't want to create in him a disdain for the time when you're teaching him. So you have to learn how to pick up on his cues, like, okay, it's time to stop. If you know it takes you 6 minutes to get to the 4 letters and then he stops, stop at 4 and introduce him to something different. Come back to that later on in the day, not after the second activity, at a different time of the day, so that his mind is refreshed and he can come back to it with a peaceful state of mind. He also needs a lot of play, so you need to find games that will teach him the same thing without him sitting with a paper and pen to do it.
Wow. Again, thank you very, very much for that.
And I will actually upload a handwriting PDF that anyone with any child at any age from 2 all the way on up to like 7th or 8th grade could use. And you could just print the pages that you need at will to do what I just, stated. And again, handwriting is one of those things that is very important. And handwriting and penmanship is practiced all the way up to like the 8th grade, because some kids just need that much practice. But again, it should not be frustrating and it should not be painful. You also want to consider the type of writing utensil that the child is using. At that age, I think it's best to use the really, really fat pencil and crayons, or triangular-shaped pencils and crayons, which would have him hold his hand properly when using a writing utensil.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Could I ask you, Sister S, to also chime in on something that is a recurring thing, because in public school it is a problem because the majority of public school teachers are females, and the majority of them in most places, even if there is a large population of Hebrew or black, so-called black children, they're still in the public schools. The majority of the teachers are of another group, and therefore, how they interpret and how they meet the needs of the boys, particularly the indigenous or the Hebrew boys, their needs are not being met. And so I'll mention a few things that we have learned, I'm calling you Dr. S. Sister S, if you would please speak to the issue of boys, and particularly when they're young. What we have found is that boys are highly motivated by power. They're motivated by control, and so they want to make it do something, make it work. They want to reach a goal that they set. And so if you can anything that you're trying to teach them, if you can tie it into some progression that makes something happen at the end, and they're driving it, they will race, really move on it. But if it's just purely giving information, and particularly if it's stationary, boys often, not always, are physically dynamic learners. And so we have to get out of just a pure feminine mindset sometimes when we're teaching our sons, especially if it's your first son. You have to become acquainted with the masculine principle. Sister S, what would be your comments particularly on educating boys, so that we don't want to feminize them, and we don't want to suppress them?
Right. Well, part of the problem is that the reason why the boys are not being challenged or not being properly understood within the classrooms is because they're being forced into a behavior that is really unnatural. Their attention span is not properly cultivated, and so where it seems like you have a child that is acting out or misbehaving or being disobedient, that may not actually be so. It's just that the material is not challenging to them, and their minds are already far superior than the material that is presented before them. And so when they get bored, they act out because there's just nothing else to do. The other thing is that when you're being made to sit in a chair for hours upon hours, that's something that really nobody wants to do. And so you're in a classroom for hours with 20 or 30 other children, or however many children there are, and there is no time for individuality, and there is no time for the teacher to focus on anything. Even if the teacher does actually realize that there's something there with the student, she just doesn't have the time to deal with that particular issue. And if she has to deal with an issue with 10 or 15 of her students, there's just no time reasonably for her to reach out to each of those individual parents to address those issues and those needs. And there are very few teachers that do it. And quite honestly, the ones that do it for all of their children, you could almost say that they have no life of their own because they're so focused on the children and giving back to their children and their community, that it takes a lot from them. It takes a lot of their personal time for them to address those needs properly and do proper research. And I say research because teachers are not psychologists. Teachers are not therapists. They're there to teach, and they're forced into that arena, and they may not be comfortable with that. A lot of teachers in our communities are not of our own, and so they don't understand the dynamics of where we come from. They don't understand the dynamics of our neighborhoods. They don't understand the dynamics of our heritage. They don't understand that we are a displaced people, and we're in a place where we did not come from. And part of the reason why we don't mix and we don't gel well with everything else is because we are not always amongst our own. We're not being taught by our own, and so the ones that are before us in these authoritative positions, they can't relate. No matter how down to earth they are, they just can't relate. And I'll tell you from personal experience, my eldest brother was expelled from 2 schools, sent to a special needs schools because he was hyperactive. Now, he's currently in his 40s, so at that time there was no ADD, no ADHD, or none of that nonsense. They just didn't know how to deal with him. But my brother is a genius. He is a genius. He's so smart, it's ridiculous. But again, he was in a classroom where he was not being challenged, and so a lot of things that he learned on his own time, and a lot of things he learned he was self-taught, so that he could receive something challenging, and we had to deal with that. You know, my mom is an immigrant. She didn't know how to deal with that. She didn't know what to do. That's what they told her had to be done, so she went with the flow, and she didn't have the support or anyone around her who could help her or anywhere to go to because she was, stuck within her own community. She didn't speak to anybody outside of our culture. She went to work and she might have interacted with her coworkers, but that was it. And when she went home, she just stayed with her own people, and that was, almost detrimental, because she couldn't reach out for the help that she would have needed to prevent that situation from occurring. And so now, we are able to identify all of these things, and we have to learn how to reach out and how to find the support. But we also have to learn how to play the game so that our children don't fall into that trap. We have to learn how to, when we find the resources, we have to learn to do what we need to do, and basically use the system for what it's worth. They use us all the time. There are resources out there, but we have to find the resources. And when we find the resources, we have to do, what is expected in order to retain the resources. And I have to say, for speaking of being in the school, sometimes people are afraid to homeschool because they get resources like speech therapy and certain therapies that come along that are mandated in IEP support and all things like that you get through the school system because they're afraid to lose those resources, not knowing that there's still help out there. In some areas, you're still allowed to receive those resources as a homeschooler, but there are many, many people within our community who can provide the same service and provide it even better because you have familiar faces. But we can't be prideful in reaching out. We can't just get stuck in ourselves. We have to reach out. You have to call somebody, reach out and touch someone, they say. You have to ask without being embarrassed about your situation. And nowadays, yes.
Let me, I want you to put a pin right there because you're getting into a very, very important topic, and we just had a sister message us who this is extremely with a very touching or very important question. So I want you to group that what you're starting to go into, which is relating to homeschooling the special needs child. Let me get I want Laura if she would come in just to touch on the boy learning thing, the piece about boys, and then I want to read the sister's part about special needs, and I want you to flow right in with what you're saying. Is that okay?
Sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sis Maura, would you come in just on the boy learning, because you had an important point that we want to just to bring in there as we were speaking about boys. This is a really good place for you to bring that in.
Shalom. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Shalom.
All right. I'm going to leave there. I wanted to just kind of piggyback off of...
You need to eat. It's gone.
Was she talking to me?
No, go right ahead. Excuse us.
Okay. I wanted to just piggyback off of what Sister S was saying about the boys because I heard the sister say he was shutting down. My academic professional experience is in both psychology and education. So I have the unique ability to put those together to really not just educate the child, but also minister to other parts of the child that's beyond the academics. So I wanted to give you a little insight into how to navigate that so you're not causing him to be frustrated. On the academic side, I completely agree with what Sister S said in terms of the progression of teaching him the letters and the alphabet so that he doesn't have frustration academically. But there's another side too, the psychological side, the emotional side, what have you. So boys, and this is just true of males in general, from 2 to 92. So you can apply this to any age son that you have. Of course, their maturity grows as they develop, but it's pretty much the same persona that you're dealing with in just them being male. Confidence. Confidence helps them to not shut down like that. You don't want to introduce anything to them that you see is causing them to shut down because it can lead to defiance. Just because they need to have power, they need to feel like they can dominate and really take charge of a thing. And so if you put something in front of them and they're not completely sure that they can devour it, conquer it, it will make them feel inferior to it. And that sense of inferiority now breeds some type of hate or disdain or anger. And it could be going towards you, the parent or the mom, because you're the one presenting the information. So confidence is, it could be a lot of things, but it's 2 core things, especially for boys and especially at the age that you mentioned. On one side of it, it's affirmation. And so you want to tell him that he can do it. Boys would do anything they feel like they can do. So lots of the shutting down is, well, he's feeling insecure, inferior about being able to do it. So you want to affirmation, praise, verbal confidence, just telling them they can do it will help so much. The other, like the second tier to the confidence, is you being cognitively aware of his limits. Just enough to challenge so that you ignite like the adrenaline and the testosterone, but not too much to push where they start to feel weak or inferior to the task. And then as you're teaching, as you're, giving that confidence and going about your day, just, if I can say anything on top of confidence, is respect. There is just a masculine power to boys or to men in general, whether they are 0 years old or 100 years old. And you have to respect them. Even though they're your children, there's just a respect that they should be given because they're male. And there's some submission of that masculine power you have to do. And so, just be careful how you speak to them. Be careful how you ask them to do things, or even in your, having to correct them or chastise them. Just be very careful because you don't want to ever disrespect the male persona because it's just going to erupt and be very, very not good for you. And lots of times the feminine presence can't handle the erupted male energy. And then how you respond when you do that will be a lot as well. So because they're little, they're still boys.
Maura, thank you very much. I hate to interrupt that because I think we need a separate call on homeschooling, gender-specific homeschooling, one for boys and one for daughters. I think that's where we need to go with this. But Sister S only has a little bit more time that she's available to be on the call, and I really, really, really want her, if possible, if she wouldn't mind answering the question. I'm going to read this. It's about, the sister is saying it's about her son. The son has a disability, or has been labeled with a disability. He was going to regular school for a while, and he was in special aid for 2 years, and she had taken him out, and so it's been a couple months since she had taken him out. And she's really just trying to get advice on homeschooling a special needs child. And she said that the label was mentally delayed and emotionally delayed. So I'm posing this one to Sister S. If you would, in the time you have remaining, however, if you would give some thoughts on that, that would be great. And very, very special thanks to Maura for joining us on the call. And I will put links to her information in the event area, and we will have to have a special time for her to come in also on one of our homeschooling calls, to dedicated time for her. That was extremely edifying. Turning it back over to you, Sister S.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll be just a few more minutes because my babies are getting impatient. With the child, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you said it's mentally and emotionally delayed, and she just pulled them out a couple of moments ago. I would need specific information for her case particularly. But again, the first thing you could do, if the child was in some sort of program or had an IEP or had some therapy through the program or school that they were in, you still may be able to receive those services. And again, that's state specific, so we'd have to look into the state where you're located and what it was that you were receiving. And I can put you in contact with someone who would be of assistance who has dealt with children with special needs. It sometimes is a little difficult to do because you would have to have been abreast of what was being done with the child already and taking note of what you thought as a parent did work and did not work with the child at the same time, in order for you to implement something that would be progressive for the child. Again, sometimes, children are labeled, but the label is not appropriate for the child and for the state that the child is in, because again, you have to realize that a lot of these things are pre-programmed and pre-established in order to prevent a certain group of people from being successful, and a lot of our children have been labeled with special needs. And so you would have to determine if the way the child was being handled is appropriate for your child. And that's the good thing. We can help you find resources out there for you to continue what you're doing. I don't know if you're working or you're staying at home or to what extent you need assistance for the child, but nobody knows the child better than you. In order for you, you're the best person to say what the child needs and how the child needs to progress. Emotional delays may have to be addressed with the family as a whole, as well as with the child on the individual basis as well. And again, sometimes IEPs are not specific enough, and sometimes when IEPs are implemented, the staff really doesn't adhere to the IEP and doesn't adhere to the stipulations that are agreed upon from the staff and the parent. And so when it's time to come to evaluate the IEP, it seems like there is no progress, or it seems that like certain things aren't really working with the child. But it's not that it's not working with the child, it's that it's not being implemented in the best possible way, or it's just not being implemented properly at all. And so that's an area that we need to be careful with these types of things, especially with IEPs, is adhering to the fact that is what is stated on the IEP actually being done with the child. And so it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to stay on top of the staff to ensure that what's on the IEP is actually being provided to the child and whatever the service the child needs as well.
Very, very good. I would say that we have, that I know of, we have at least 3, maybe 4 mothers here at RTA who are very, very aware and experienced with homeschooling with a special needs child. So we will link you up with people who can help and who can give you at least some ideas and point you in the right direction. and be somebody that a point of contact that you can bounce ideas off of. Thank you very much for that. What do you have time for, Sister S? Where are you on your time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How is your time, sister? Are you
I got like 3 minutes before they come banging my door down.
Okay, go. I would say, do you want another question, or would you like to share a little more with the time you have? You know, we want to make sure we get every moment we can, and then we'll understand when you have to.
Yes, I do want to jump on the bandwagon with Maura because concerning gender-specific training of the children, it's just, you know, men and women are just different, and that's why the Father separated us, because we don't function the same, we don't operate the same, we don't intellectualize the same. Our emotions are not the same, and so we cannot impress improper emotions and attitudes into a boy or a girl. You know, and like she said, we have to be very careful how I treat our boys. You know, I have more boys than I do girls, but I'm a girl, so, you know, my way of doing things is feminine. And so sometimes when things have to get done, I got to call my husband because that boy is just not going to receive it from me because I'm not the same. I'm a she and he's a he. And so this is very important. It's very important for us to get all back to keeping our families intact. And where a family is not intact, I would implore the quote-unquote single mother to find a male figure, a serious male figure who has actually done something in his life, who is respectable, that can mentor the male child, because that male child has to know that there's another male there that he can go to, and he has to know that, you know, okay, you know, I need to get this together because Mr. So-and-so said X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and they need that. You know, fathers are extremely important for both boys and girls because, listen, I don't know what I'd do without my dad. I just don't know. You know, and on the day, y'all forbid, when my daddy passes away, it will be terrible. But I know that fathers are extremely, extremely important. And if you have a father, even if you're not with him, who is doing right by the child, then you must keep them involved in the family. And if you don't, you have to try to seek out some elders or some other brothers who can step in and fill that role. But it has to be a person who is constant. It has to be a person who is consistent. And it has to be a person who is committed to actually seeing this child grow up to be a respectable, honorable, productive man in our society. I'm done.
Excellent, excellent. We thank you so much, all on behalf of all of the sisters, on behalf of everyone at RTA. We thank you, Sister S, for joining the call, for sharing your expertise, your experience, you know, just the counsel that you gave. We are very appreciative of it. We're going to say shalom to you, and because we know that your time is very, all of sisters, all of you, we really want to respect your time. We normally kind of would be really starting to wrap up. I am going to share a few things, and then we're going to go around for points of interest. And so a few things that I wanted to make sure we thought about or took note of, relating to pearls, and I want you to just kind of jot these things down, or hopefully we'll have this call available. You want to have think about the laboratory of ideas, creating a culture of scholarship, a culture of science, a culture of engineering. What does that mean? Lifelong learning. The idea of let's see what works. Let's try different things, and let's actually evaluate them based on some criteria that we establish, and then let's do what works. Another thing is the idea of a thought apprenticeship. So sometimes you can't actually do an activity with the child, but you can still talk through it. In other words, you can do something, or they can, you can recall something that happened, and you can say, now, why are we doing this and not this? Or, how did I solve this problem? You want to call it out. You want to have them, what you're doing is sharing your thought process with them. You can be doing that all the time, and you don't need any equipment, anything. The other thing is natural consequences. Don't be so quick to rush in and help them figure it out. Get them in the habit of figuring it out, dealing with the consequences. If they make a mistake, deal with it. What are the consequences of that error? So those are some things. Other pitfalls I want to share with you. Curriculum dependency. Anytime we're talking about homeschooling and the sister's first question is about curriculum, I know that they are really not thinking deeply about homeschool. Okay? No curriculum is in and of itself going to educate your child. You have to take control of it, and it should be based on your husband's or your patriarch's purpose for the tribe. It should be based on your tribal purpose. Everything should be tied into that. Every single thing. If you can't see how it ties into that, then you have to really think about whether it's something you want to spend time on. Reading well, writing well, solving problems well, those are general skills that really tie into almost everything. We talked a little bit about fear, but the other things are being too rigid, and that includes learning style dependency, especially as a child gets older. By the time a child is really high school age, be wary of learning style dependency. So it's okay if you're a visual learner, but we can't allow that to become a crutch. And so even if you are a visual learner, you've got to develop the ability to absorb information using in other ways. And then we talked about the pitfall of trying to bring public school home. Homeschool is not just public school at home. It should be so much more than that. And I would just say that that the points that Sister S brought up about mom's mental health, mom's wellness, life balance, and stress management for mom. The old folks used to say, lazy mama equals smart babies, smart children. And what that really means is they should be working harder than you. Learning, they should be enjoying, in many cases, their learning, but you shouldn't be overwhelmed and stressed out, and then the child is over there chilling. So you want to get control of the environment so that it's not stressing you out. And contact us and talk to us if you need to find out some ways to take some of the stress out of it. At this point, because we are coming very closely to the end, I want to turn it over to you, sisters. Do we have any points of interest? Anything that resonated with you from today's call that you would like to just to share? What interested you? What impacted you?
Shalom.
Shalom.
Impacted me. Shalom sisters, and it's good to be on the call. One thing that impacted me is I have a 5-year-old, and I have really been thinking about homeschooling since, the age of 18 months to the age of 2. She knew the basic donor name, the Lord's Prayer, from the months of the year, days, so far and so forth. But this moment, I'm trying to teach her how to read and write. So the learning lines and the from that to the letters that really, really, really helped me. And I'm very thankful for that. So I can begin to um, um, making it fun. So that helped me, and I really do appreciate that. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you for that, sister. Any other sisters? Any
Yes.
sisters? Wonderful. Go right ahead.
I'm just very grateful because this being my first son, I'm the one who spoke about having an 8-month-old. I always knew I wanted to homeschool, but I just didn't know certain things. I didn't know that there was learning styles different for male and different for female. I didn't know about, just the different things that you discussed about the letters and the way to train your child, your mind, thinking tribally. I didn't know all these things came into play. So for me, it's just a confidence booster because I've always had these ideas, but I never had anyone to talk to them about because, like Sister S said, a lot of people don't support homeschool or they think that, your child is going to be socialized or whatever stigma they have with it. So I'm just grateful that I, at the stage where I'm in, me being 27, having my first child as a young person, have access to you women who've been doing this for a while, who have knowledge and have wisdom to impart in me and help me along this journey. So I'm extremely grateful and thank you.
Well, thank you for that. We're really thankful that you joined us on the call, and that's what we want. We want mothers and wives, we want you to be empowered. We want you to feel confident. You should feel confident in that this wonderful chosen generation is who the Most High has entrusted you with. And so I am really, just thankful for the networking that's happening. Sisters are reaching out to each other. And any other sisters want to give a point of interest on today's call? Anything you learned today?
Shalom,
Hey,
sisters.
Shalom.
Shalom, sisters. This is Toya from Texas. I learned a great deal. One of the main things that stood out to me was when Sister S, she said to know your state laws and to know the requirements and regulations because, even though we are set apart from the things that are going on around us, we still want to move with wisdom so that, we can continue to do what's best for our families. And that part resonated with me, so that's something that I plan on looking into and studying more and making sure that I hopefully can share with you all as well, along with my husband and anyone else that is venturing on the homeschooling route. So that resonated with me.
There was another sister who was right behind you. Chime in, sister.
Yes, shalom. This is Sister Trinette, or Sister Abigail. My point of interest, I have a 6-year-old son, and I started to homeschool him before I allowed him to go into kindergarten. When I allowed him to go into kindergarten, he had some social behavior issues. With those social behavior issues, I tried to work, back and forth with the school and their policies in regards to social behaviors, getting calls and things like that, to the point where I'm telling them, okay, it's a redirection. Do this, do something differently with this child, my child. And because they weren't able to or even told me what I'm asking for is like special needs, and I said, oh, no, you're not going to do that. And it really made me pull back on going back into homeschool and why I'm doing it. Because one, like Sister Gina or Ima Gina said, it's in regards to control and how much control either we give to others or that we have with training up our children. And that's one thing that I want to have is, or allow my husband to have, is that control of what they're learning and what we're teaching and the examples that they have, and even the commentary that they hear in regards to themselves. You know, I don't want my child to hear, anyone's child to hear that they may have, or I will say that someone lacks patience, you know, to give them what they need. When, hey, they have a mother or a father that has that patience to go ahead and do so. So that was one of my my point of interest. I did hear Sister S, I believe it was, when she said something about the IEP. I don't know specifically any type of curriculum that is geared towards that at all, or if there's something specific that I should be doing with him, because there's that redirecting, but I think it's just individual to the child, so I'm still trying to figure out what works. Going back to what you said, Imagina, about the tribal purpose and what the child is supposed to be doing. Myself, when my child was in my womb, I said, he's going to be a genius. He is a genius, and he's going to be an engineer. And at 6 years old, he knows that he's going to be an engineer. And it's for the purpose of us. You know, I said that we need more scientists. We need more engineers. You know, we need more inventors. And because we need those things, that's what he's going to be. So I do have purpose within my son on what I'm educating him for. And I think that I'm glad that I'm doing that, and I'm glad that was brought up. So I'm glad I'm in the right direction. So that is all.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Sometimes what's needed is confirmation. I mean, sometimes you just need to know, hey, I'm not crazy here. You know, I'm probably on the right track, or at least a very good track to be on, and so be encouraged.
Thank you.
And you're right. It does need to be individualized. Because we're tribal people, we are not industrialists. You know, we're not trying to make a bunch of robots or a bunch of machines. And so it's a very different culture that we have. You know, we don't turn people into things in the Hebrew culture. And so, you know, we're not commoditizing our people and taking away their unique value. So that was very well said. Any other sisters? You know, we're coming to a close on this call, but does any other sister want to share her point of interest before we close out? Sisters, anybody? Anybody want just to, if you let us know your name or reach out to us, anybody want want intercession from the mothers on anything relating to your children or anything, anything that anybody needs to share before we close out.
Hello?
Okay, yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I would like to get a chance to talk to one of the mothers on my son had asked you about with the special needs, and really try to talk to them on another level so they can get an understanding and so they can help me out. Because sometimes we get a little frustrated because he get mad when he don't know how to do something. So I just want to know how to be a little bit more patient with him, and be able to get some ideas of some work that he can do that don't feel like it's too advanced for him, but I don't also want to make him handicapped as well.
Yes, ma'am. And what I want you to do is if you would send me a message just so that we make sure we don't drop the ball here, with your question, and so that we can get you in touch with the right people. And I want you to be encouraged and understand that there's a lot of things that a child who's differently abled or who has different abilities that they can still do to be incredibly valuable to the tribe. And so be encouraged. It doesn't diminish them, not one bit. But we will have to spend the time finding the right role or the right niche for that child to play in the tribe. But they should be very much valued as a member of the tribe. You'd be surprised just which one of the children Yah will send to do a great work. And so all of them have value. And we are getting all kind of great help and great messages on our internal message board, and we will get you in touch with the right people, sister. Please give us a special message to remind us of your questions so that we follow through on everything we have said tonight. It is after the 9 o'clock hour, sisters, and we definitely want to be respectful of your time. We know you have to get back to your husbands and your children and the work that you have where you are. Please know that you are extremely valuable. There is no Israel without our mothers and our sisters and daughters who are helping and assisting the brethren to restore the nation. We love you so much at RTA. Please know that you are valued, you are appreciated, and your role is invaluable. We need you to function in your role, which is valid in and of itself. And with that, we are going to bid you shalom, dear sisters and mothers. One more sister coming in very much at the end. Sister, we want to all just tell you shalom, and hopefully we will talk again soon. Follow the RTA page for our calls. We love you. Hallelujah and shalom. Good evening.
Shalom.
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 Shalom. Okay.